little of that. And they happen to be in Vegas, where all the magic is there. And this is probably why the Raiders decided, you know what? They probably wanted Bo Nix. But then when the Broncos took him, they said, you know what? What's the next guy?
One pick ahead of them, by the way.
On our board, and it was Brock Bowers, who I thought he was, even though he went to Georgia, a hell of a tight end. So you take Brock, who can threaten you down the middle. You can flex him out. He's a matchup nightmare. And you mix Jacoby Myers with Devontae Adams and quality quarterback play, you have a chance. And that's all you want. You just want an opportunity to say you can win games. And believe it or not, Ryan, obviously, you know I'm not a Raiders fan.
Yes, I know.
The Raiders can actually shock a lot of people because, once again, Gardner Minshew has shown as though he can win games in this league. And all you're asking for is a competent quarterback that can deliver the ball on time and rhythm. And, oh, by the way, you guys talked about Max Crosby. So if that defensive line can create pressure, they can turn the ball over, and the Raiders can surprise a lot of people.
I realize that. I know I should be patient, but honestly, I've been patient for like 20 plus years. And the Raiders are in a bad spot, I think, because they're not great, but they're not totally horrible to the point where they will get like a high draft pick.
Yes.
So they're like mediocre. So there are going to have to be teams that don't really need a quarterback in next year's draft.
Well, listen, if I can really quickly, let me circle back to something that, Alex brought up about Dak Prescott. So there's been this talk about, well, Jerry Jones and Dak and CD Lamb and all of that stuff. And there was a report earlier this week about Shador's son, Deion Sanders' son, possibly being selected by the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys already have Trey Lance. In the first preseason game, Dak didn't play. That gave them an opportunity to see more of Trey Lance. So if things fall the way that you want them to fall, Ryan, you can get your quarterback who already has experience, and his name is Dak Prescott. And I think if you get it, you'll be happy.
Listen,
I don't want no.
We did this earlier where it was 5 or 6 teams that were either going to draft a quarterback or maybe they go get Kirk Cousins. I throw Dak out there just because, there he is off in the distance. He could get $50, $60 million a year from somebody on the open market. Hey, it could be Vegas. They just said goodbye to Derek Carr. They just said goodbye to Josh Jacobs, and they've got a little more money to play with. It is encouraging, though, when you move on from 2 of their offensive leaders, and I don't think the offense has taken that much of a hit. You started with Brock Bowers, and the synergy that I like with Luke Getsy, that despite it was puzzling at times, some of the play calls that Chicago had, their base offense, the 12 personnel, they're among one of the top teams that deployed 2 tight ends, and they spent high draft picks. Brock Bowers, 13th overall. And I don't want to forget Michael Mayer. Stand up for Notre Dame. That is going to be a factor in this offense. If the Raiders put out their 3-4 best receivers out on the field, that's not 4 wide receivers. That's 2 receivers and 2 tight ends. So they're going to be bigger on offense, with the exception of, according to Max Crosby, that little guy at quarterback. And they're going to be bigger on the offensive line, too, because after Brock Bowers, they took Jackson Powers-Johnson, who's slotted to play left guard, coming out of Oregon, who played 4 positions on the offensive line. And they also retained some of their interior line players, and they brought back, Andre James is back, and Cody Whitehair is coming over. So they've got bodies, and they can withstand a little more wear and tear over the course of the season, so that hopefully there is no bottoming out and this team still can somewhat stay competitive. Now, Ryan, I'm encouraged that despite seeing so many guys leaving, and the word is encouraged because without any real evidence of what the hell this team is, I'm just going to go glass half full. Maybe that's because I haven't been watching them for the last 20 years like you have, but I would just like to say that, the Chargers aren't going to be in their way. The Denver Broncos haven't beaten them in 5 years. And the last time they played the Kansas City Chiefs, they beat them on Christmas Day, as you so glowingly told us.
Yes, true.
So I feel as if within the AFC West, they've got a puncher's chance in every one of those games and should be favored against a Chargers squad. And I guess this is my last thought, because as much as I would love, for your sake, to just talk about what a depleted roster the Chargers were, the treasure chest of, young players and building the weapons around Justin Herbert. As much as I want to, talk bad about it, Tom Telesco, within like a week of being fired, was brought in to be the Raiders GM. And I'm just curious about the pairing with Antonio Pierce long term. I think it's kind of interesting from a philosophical standpoint. And at least the first check that I have was just going BPA, taking Brock Bowers as the best player available, rather than sacrificing all the draft picks to try to move up for one of those quarterbacks. So I guess if I like the offseason, the future long-term outlook with this Pierce and Telesco pairing, Ryan, what would you like to see from this team? Maybe Nick, you can chime in as well. Just kind of the overall direction. Is this really just keep the ship afloat? That the autumn wind, the Raiders are a pirate. Keep this ship afloat until they find a quarterback. I mean, what are some things you want to look for this season, even if it's not elite quarterback play?
Oh, I know it can't get much worse when it comes to drafting players. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb. The Raiders could have drafted CeeDee Lamb. Instead, they drafted a guy named Henry Ruggs, who's in jail right now. So as long as they hit on the draft and their picks, are playing well, maybe Devontae Adams doesn't want to leave, and they keep it afloat, and then they can get a decent quarterback in the draft, and we'll see what happens. So I will be optimistic in that way. That's the only thing I have going for me.
Well, I'll say this.
Yes.
Here's what I think that the Raiders are looking at. There's a model out there in the NFL, and if you can, I guess, get the pieces aligned and get everyone to play, you can become this team. And the team I'm talking about, San Francisco 49ers. Because when you think about how the Niners are built, they built getting after other teams, being fast on the first and second level of their defense, also running the ball and having a balanced attack, but also having a competent quarterback. Now, once again, I'm not saying that, Gardner Minshew needs to be Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy, as we all know, was Mr. Irrelevant. No one really gave him a chance, but he had pieces around him. And when you look at what the Raiders have built, they have started to put pieces around their quarterback, because the idea is that, you know what? We're not going to go to the Super Bowl this year. We're going to be competitive. And just so happens, if certain plays break our way, we are well equipped to take advantage of it because, okay, like you said, no more Josh Jacobs. So Zamir White is proven to be a decent running back. You add Alexander Madison to the mix, who's shown as though he could be a physical back. He could be a change of pace back. You got Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and Devontae Adams. So you have some pieces. And the whole idea is that when you look at the division, you hit on the Denver Broncos. We don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback. And even with that being said, the team is very young. So everyone's looking past the Denver Broncos. You look at Justin Herbert. He's hurt for a couple of games, right? The Raiders could creep up on someone and really shock them and put themselves in a position where it's a win-and-go-home situation. And we know how that works. So this is, and I can't believe I'm actually giving you this much validation, but this is the way I see football. This is the way I see things for the Raiders, that this can actually happen for them.
So, Ryan, to wrap things up, we do this with every of our season previews. We're looking for the floor for your Vegas Raiders and the ceiling, the expectations of what happens when things break your way, like Nick Ferguson is obviously hoping for, and what is going to happen if things don't go as well. We'll start with the floor for these Raiders.
The floor is probably 5 wins, and then Devontae Adams saying, I want out. Get me out of here.
Yeah, watching Receiver on Netflix.
Yes, exactly. Yes. The ceiling is the Raiders somehow making it to the playoffs as a wild card. That happens. I'm like, okay, I'm that would make me very, very happy.
Wow. All right. So
I mean, just being honest.
Listen, man,
and again, I'm just saying, you've got a Week 18 matchup at home against the Chargers. It can be like 2021 all over again.
So
even
beautiful.
if you've got nothing to play for and they have everything to play for, you can at least play spoilers. That at least sounds exciting to me. Although it is kind of crazy. I have the schedule in front of me. They get Denver and Kansas City weeks 12 and 13, respectively.